Good afternoon, y'all. I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, to order at 3 p.m. All right, if we could please roll call. The machines are open.
Councilmember Bartholomew. Thank you.
All right, all present except for Gouy and Black.
Stuart Gore is absent.
All right. Moving along to the prayer and the pledge. Benny, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
I,
Brotherly to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, go ahead with the prayer. Bow our heads. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that which is right. Amen.
the fact that we also acknowledge the LaFrance family, the Gibson passing as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 2, executive session. There are none. Status. Item 3, status report by executive port director.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. Follows is my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 29 October to 3 November. During this short time frame, the port staff held several meetings with PPG staff regarding the transfer of the ferries from the PPG to the PPHTD. These meetings have been very beneficial, and we have also met with our federal lobbying firm Mercury to include Becky Niktakis, the port grant writer, to review all the grants the Plaquemines Parish government has utilized in the past to run the ferries and to explore what other grants are available. There is a very good cooperation between the two staffs. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my report.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanders. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
23, are they having bought some property to sell to LNG? I've been negotiating on sales of property with the construction of LNG plant.
Would you say that again?
All right, the 23, that's with Chris Feathers working for us.
Yeah.
Did he make an agreement with LNG facility plant to purchase land, to buy land that he purchased?
LNG? I do not know, not to my knowledge.
Okay. But I understood that.
Are there any other questions from the board? Comments from the audience? Hi, Mr. Valley.
Hello. At the last meeting, I made reference to the report from the executive director about all the activities in the port that we're not getting information on them. I think we have about 6 probably good projects that are going on actively, and it would be beneficial if the public would get updated where we are with those. I mean, we drive down the road, we see Global Ventures site being cleared. We know Nola Terminal's working on the site. We got the Tallgrass property that's going on. We got the container port. Where are we with all these projects? Mr. Chairman, maybe we could get the executive director could bring us up to date on those.
All right, thank you, Mr. Valley. Sandy, if you'd like to elaborate on some of that, you could please do so.
If Mr. Valet would like to come to the port of the State of the Port address, we'll be discussing those projects in depth.
We've been to 2 council meetings.
Again, I go back to give us the state of the port address instead of Part B.
PABI is merely sponsoring the luncheon, but if our board would like a special port of the State of the Port address, I'll make myself available.
We're here right now.
I'm not prepared for that.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Colin, please go ahead.
Y'all addressed my comments. This is 2 meetings now. This is the second meeting since we asked about it the last time. We're all here. This is supposed to be your address of the status of what the port's going on down here. Now, we don't have to wait till a business association meeting's going on. We're looking at the public, and you all, as a council, you're the board. I mean, I think it ought to be on the website. I think it ought to be an update every week on the website on every project that's going on, the status of it. I'll stay so you don't have to come back again.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Valley. I think, given the nature, the competitive nature, especially around the container port, of course, we know Port of New Orleans is really trying to make sure this happens. There's some opposition in St. Bernard. Maybe Mr. Sanders realizes that some of that information is sensitive. Although, an update on VG, it's pretty boilerplate. They're out there, they're doing some site clearance. I'm sure you may have seen today that it was announced that Venture Global now has what seems, and I could be wrong, but y'all can correct me if I am, now the largest LNG deal that an American company has with China. So it seems like cargoes are being secured out of the facility here, and progress is being made there.
Mr. Chairman, I mentioned last meeting 2 weeks ago that I had met with a law firm relative to the public information. And as I understand, this entity is a public board and a public entity. There's nothing confidential here. It's all public information, but they shield everything from you all and the public. I mean, we don't need a freedom of information request to find out what's going on a daily basis.
Mrs. Newberry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Valet. Understand, I have a question for Sandy. So, does Mr. Valet know something that we don't know? Is there something out there the parish, the public knows something, something that we don't? I'm just trying to figure out what he's getting to, because we do have VG moving right now, and that's all we have on the books. So, is there something out there to come that you're going to make an announcement?
The projects that I will be discussing at the State of the Port are going to be Venture Global, CHS status, Nola Oil, what else? Yeah, and our potential terminal operator.
And is there
And
something?
also capital project updates.
Okay. So pretty much we have been having these discussions in the past with these
ma'am.
same, that's what I wanted to know, if there's anything that we don't know about that, because I think Mr. Valet's just wanting to put something on the webpage to let everybody know, hey, Venture Global's coming. And I don't know if you can put anything with potential until I'm just trying to figure out I know what he's wanting, but I'm just not being clear. I'm just trying to understand, because he knows what's happening.
Ms.
I'm
Newberry.
just trying to get some clarity of what
In
you
all
want.
fairness to you.
And look, I'm with you, understand that you want clarity, but I like to kind of clear the air on exactly what you want.
I appreciate you getting into that. It's very difficult for them to know what I know and that they don't know, okay? I do know a lot of things. As you all well know, I'm very familiar with the river. I know what's going on up and down the river, and I keep track of all the political aspects of what goes on. Okay? What we're not hearing is very simple. Just status reports on all your active projects that you have going on, just like your budget and all your numbers that you get presented. You don't get all the facts. You get bits and pieces, and there's nothing on a repetitive, updated progress. It's not a major deal. You're the board. You are the controlling factor of them. But they don't tell you what's going on.
Is that a fact? We don't know what's going on? Is that true? I'm just trying to,
I mean, I had never heard that code name until I read it in the newspaper. It'd be nice to hear about those on Monday mornings.
Call Pa B, they don't know.
I'll yield.
I mean, I hate to say it, that when the public knows more than the board knows, it's terrible. And we got to find out. I spent a day yesterday of my time with the developer of the man camps and the terminal push that did the global venture deal in Lake Charles. I brought him down. I came down and met with Carlton LaFrance. We toured every development that's on this side of the river. We talked about every one of the developments that's going on. We talked about the pros and cons of developing facilities, what global venture was going to do and not do. But you don't hear that from the port telling you what's going on with that or any of these developments. This developer, and happened to be a man that I know for a long time. He and I served on the board together in Baton Rouge. I trust him emphatically. He's the one who developed all the facilities for global venture in Lake Charles and was destroyed by the hurricane, Carlton. He told you that yesterday. You met him. We looked at all of them. He was amazed at the amount of activity that's going on from Alliance down to the port. And I said he awed, frankly. He couldn't believe all the activity. But there's no news going on. There's no reports telling anybody about the activities of it, where it stands. It's just like I walked in today with Kristen about his Nola Oil Terminal. I talked to him for 5 minutes. Walking in the door, I know more about what's going on with that than probably you all do. And that's a shame. You know,
Donald,
Yes.
I mean, what do you think? We're just sitting around? We asked some things. I mean,
but the
Benny,
public
Benny,
doesn't
Benny
know.
orchestrated most of the deal, it seems, with to help with that. I mean, we had meetings about it. I mean, I think it's a bit much to say that we don't know what's going on.
The public doesn't know what goes on. Maybe I rephrase that to you. It's just a simple status report on every deal you got going on that you put money on. Where are we with the railroad? Where with the monies that we put out for that? Where with the progress on those deals? Where with the contracts you all asked for? You don't get reports on that. Anyway, I'm going to sit down. I took enough of your time.
Mr. Russo, you have the floor.
Yes, I get your frustration, Mr. Valley, but on those projects, I know that, Sandy, you have published numerous projects in the Gazette under confidentiality agreements that under code names. And I had an attorney look at that, and I believe that those code names might offer some relief to you for divulging confidential material. However, I think that the project general nature should be shared with the board, and there are several of them out there that during the week we should talk about. And they should be addressed with the chairman and the vice chairman in Monday morning meetings, because when I pick up the Gazette and I read the public notices and I see that, like Mr. Blink just stated, the Vesuvius project, what is that? You know, just because we put that public notice in there about confidentiality doesn't mean that the project nature should be shielded from the board. So I think that might be some of the frustration here. And I would appreciate if you'd go back and get a list of those and provide a list to us with a brief explanation of what the project consists of. It might be a borrow pit here or a grain elevator here, whatever it is. But there are many of them out there that you have published on that nature under that law.
I hear you, Mr. Roussel, and can do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. LaFrance?
Yes. I did meet with Mr. Vallon and a gentleman yesterday, but I was approached by 3 individuals total that would like to utilize the Diamond Park. And I spoke to Mr. Rennie Beers this morning, right before the meeting, and hopefully by next week I can set up a meeting with the 3 different companies that want to make a proposal with our parish engineering department, where we could come up with one proposal where they can offer a quote or different bids, but we just want to make sure that we comparing apple to apple and orange to orange. Thank you.
It's good to know. Thank you, Mr. LaFrance. All right. Are there any other questions from the board or from comments from the audience? Mr. Forshey?
Rob Forche. I'm just going to clarify a little bit as to what Donald just said. So I think the public understands that there's some things that are confidential and doesn't need to come to the public in total details. But the highlights of any of these projects should be divulged. Then on top of that, if you have things in the capital outlay and capital projects that is in the budget that is coming from public funding, that all of that should be divulged. Anything that can be divulged to this POBby board should be divulged right here in this room or in Belchase, period, end of story. And for this stuff to go to a POBby board in lieu of coming to the public at a public meeting in front of the commissioners, I believe is unlawful, on top of being totally, I'm going to say trying to hide in lieu of saying things like cats in the litter box, right? Because that's the way I feel, and that's the way a lot of public feel, is that things are not being divulged, not by the chairman, not by the co-chairman, not by the director, not by his underling, or anybody else to do with this port. The projects are not being explained and divulged in the information level that they should be. And I'm going to let it go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fortune. Mr. LaFrance, you have the floor.
Mr. Sanders,
Yes, sir.
could at the next meeting, could you give us a status report on the PLT project, the CHS project, railroad project, Nola Terminal? If there anything going on with the methanol plant, Venture Global, and the container port.
Yes, sir. Can do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. LaFrance. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, please.
Item 3A, financial report, budget to actual.
There is no report this meeting.
Item 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Item 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions. We have a few.
And if anybody has withdrawals or deferrals, please speak up as well. Okay, Stacy, you can go.
The first couple is for Commissioner Blank. An ordinance to amend and as amended readopt ordinance number 07-102, adopted May 10, 2007, to establish and initiate the collection of the Plaquemines Parish Port, Harbor, and Terminal District security fees, security surcharges, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing Menard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, to extend the current agreement for professional services with Dwyer, Cambry, and Suffren for the provision of legal counsel and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing the acceptance of proposal for providing grant and program management services for the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The next is for council, is Commissioner Bartholomew, an ordinance authorizing and directing Port Executive Director Menard J. Sanders to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the Plaquemines Parish Port, Harbor, and Terminal District and Plaquemines Parish Government for the transfer of certain rights, obligations, liabilities, and assets related to ferry services, establishing a ferry department in the Plaquemines Parish Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, accepting the transfer of employees from the Plaquemines Parish Government Ferry Department, all in accordance with the civil service rules, maintaining existing ferry schedules and rates, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The next is for Commissioner Newberry. An ordinance to create the legal department and the position of Executive Counsel of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to amend the 2021 General Fund manpower structure and operating expenditure budget to provide for the legal department and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. And that is it.
I have a deferral. I have defer 6C and 6D.
Anybody else? Deferrals, withdrawals? Yes, sir.
We'll withdraw the item L. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, G, yeah. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong agenda.
Did you say withdrawal?
It's your legislation. Can you do that?
Did you say withdrawal?
G, withdraw.
G.
That's what the amendment was that was written out, that was ordered today. Yeah,
E.
all right.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat that? We couldn't hear that.
Sure. So, agenda items 6C and 6D have been deferred. Agenda item 6E is an echo, has been withdrawn.
Thank you.
Because of the amended legislation has been amended. That's read by the chair, secretary.
Mr. LaFrance, are you still in the queue? Do you need to speak?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, bids and advertisements? Got it? Oh, sorry. Oh, see where you are right now.
6A, there's none. 6B, a resolution approving and authorizing Mr. Menard J. Sanders, Port Executive Director, to accept proposal presented by Infinity Engineering Consultants, LLC, for the bidding and construction phase for the B-3 relocation 5-year capital improvements project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Newberry.
I'll offer it as read.
Offered by Newberry, seconded by Arborough. Any comments, questions from the board, staff, members of the audience? Mr. Roussel.
Yes, we had some discussion on this item. It was deferred from the last meeting. I had requested some numbers to see where we were with this project. And after Mr. Matthews provided those numbers, I thank you for that. We are now, with the construction estimate, looking at this project costing us approximately $8 million. The entire property that we purchased was around $7 million for the Venture Global Site Phase 1. I'd like the director to explain the history of this project and how did we get to this point of being able to have to pay this amount of money. And you can start from the day that the came to the council and we let the offer expire and had to go to court.
That's correct. There are two small parcels on the dog leg, right past the dog leg on parcel 3. One is parcel B1, one is parcel B3. On parcel B1, it was an abandoned site that was appraised. I don't remember what it was appraised. We were prepared to purchase the property. Some of the items that I'm going to hit the high notes were discussed in an executive session. But in essence, that cost, we paid probably about another $200,000+ because we let it go. It was not voted on in time. And in the interim, a buyer put his intent to purchase on it. So we had to go into a eminent domain quick take. And that cost us legal fees and the cost of the property. Parcel B3, as everyone knows, it is an ongoing entity. You can quick take it, but it's a whole new ballgame versus vacant land. You have to pay not only the price of the property itself, but you also have to pay a multiple based on the company's earnings on that piece of property. The individuals who own it, Port Ship Services, they wholeheartedly agreed that they wanted to, if we could make them whole, they would move. They did not want to be in the way of the port expanding, particularly with Venture Global. So on a parcel that we own within Parcel 3, we came up with the idea of swapping land. We would pick them up and move them probably no more than a quarter mile downriver. And then when we finally got that new parcel permitted, then we would trade paper on it. We would trade title, and that was agreed. It has taken us 4, 5 years, 3.5, to get the permit on that parcel. And we have run into a myriad of things. First of all, any new project on the river cannot roll over the threshold of the levee. Whereas where they are right now, you can, but it can't be grandfathered. So it has to actually be bridged over the levee, and that took an inordinate amount of engineering and kept going back to the Corps, and the Corps was doing stabilizing exercises on it, feasibility studies, and it's just taken this long. Another reason for the extreme delay was we went to about 18 months of high river that was it just pretty much stopped the project from what we were trying to do. So, and then also with COVID and the supply chain that's happened, materials have skyrocketed anywhere from 3 to 4 times. And I can personally attest to that with just trying to put a pergola up in my backyard. From the time I started, it went up, lumber went up 4.5 times. So all those added together, that project is, the price really does make your eyebrows go up, but it is what it is. Now, these 2 parcels are needed to provide Venture Global the last piece that they have in their contract with us to provide them the full 1,200 acres to put their Phase 1 and Phase 2 on. So we're at the crossroads now where we're ready to put a bow on parcel B3, and it's up to you 9 guys to vote up or down to give that to Venture Global.
Well, of course, I would not do anything to block Venture Global, even though it is very expensive. But I would hope that in the future that we would have more thorough discussions on projects like this. And had we known that the option would have been expiring the next day, we probably would have acted on it, and we could have cut maybe a year and a lot of money out of this project. The High River, I understand the High River delays things, but it shouldn't delay the engineering. Engineering is done on dry land and the paperwork and so forth. But I would hope the purpose of me bringing this to light, that we are paying $8 million for this project. I believe if we would have taken a different approach, we probably wouldn't be here today and we wouldn't have had this delay. So I'm going to support the resolution. I am concerned that we are paying almost $250,000 for resident inspection to the engineering firm, but I don't know that you have anybody qualified enough to monitor the job. But that is a lot of money for a resident inspection. And I'm not sure how long the project is. If it's 2 years, that's a salary of $125,000 a year for someone. So that's another approach that should be looked at when we talk about resident inspections. I know the parish has those issues of giving engineering firms resident inspections that cost this type of money, and it's very expensive. So I'll leave you with those thoughts, and I would hope that we work on improving the situation.
Yes, sir. Understood. Heard very well.
All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. Valley?
Mr. Chairman, does the need still exist to move port ship? Hadn't things changed substantially? What's going on? Why do you need to move them? I mean, Bell Chase Marine's right down the road, almost near them. And you're not doing anything with them.
Yeah,
We
Mr.
spend a
Valley.
lot of money, a lot of time doing something that, does the need still exist?
I mean, this whole fire drill has been giving me a lot of heartburn. You know, we're moving an existing business, less than a quarter mile. There are competing businesses right there. I think if some sort of analysis would have been done on the front end, you know, how much business is really being operated out of that facility. The same company also owns a pier, which is right next to the ferry landing. We're moving the ferry landings to near where the siphon is at, so just a few hundred feet. So that particular entity owns land on both sides of the road when you drive into the Point of Lahash Ferry on the west side of the river. I'm sure they would have taken that, given that it has a ramp, which needs some improvements. But I think they could have easily, we could have struck a better deal, but sometimes both sides of the house, the Plaquemines Parish Government side and Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District side, aren't communicating as clearly as they need to. And of course, that was in the past. That was before this cohort of council members. But I can agree with you that things need to be looked at in a rational and diligent way. And when people have questions, they shouldn't just be brushed to the side. They should be taken very seriously. You know, as many of you are aware, the world is becoming increasingly more complicated. There are a lot of rules. Attorneys are involved. It's hard to do business, and nothing is getting easier. And we shouldn't just assume it's easy to move a shed on the river without it costing $8 million.
The question, though, is, do we still need to move them? Why?
I'll defer to the staff on that.
We do need to move them because in their present position, they would be right in the middle of Venture Global's 1,200 acres for Phase 2.
But Venture Global hadn't asked for them to be moved. It hadn't interfered with any of the designs they have they?
It's part of the contract that I give them that land. So I had to move that business to be able to deliver to Venture Global what they needed for their site for Phase 2.
I mean, I read
Plain
the
and
agreement.
simple.
I don't recall seeing that in the agreement that says that was part of what you had to furnish to them.
I don't know what else to tell you.
Have you all
Read it
seen a
again?
request from Venture Global?
Mr. Valley, in my discussions with Venture Global, this is a request from Venture Global. It's been understood from day one
Okay.
that this needed to be cleared. And I support it wholeheartedly to make sure that Venture Global gets what they want. This has been an issue that has been raised in the past about advanced rents, and without going into all of the details, I assure you that Venture Global wants this completed, and as expensive as it is, I'm willing to support it because Venture Global is real. And
I appreciate that, Mr. Rousseau, and I accept your answer. That's a good answer there.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Call a question?
All right, and the vote passes.
Item 6F, a resolution amending certain terms of Resolution Number 21-173, adopted on June 24, 2021, making certain fundings with respect to and authorizing the issuance of not exceeding $300 million Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District Dock and Wharf Facilities Revenue Bonds, Nola Oil Terminal LLC Project Series 2022, awarding said bonds to the purchasers thereof, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of the indenture of trust, a loan agreement, a ground lease, a facilities lease, and a bond purchase agreement, fixing the maturity and rate of interest, authorizing the execution of other documents in connection therewith, authorizing the officers of the issuer to do all things necessary to effectuate this resolution, and providing for other matters in connection with the foregoing. Commissioner Roussel.
Yes. I'll offer next for a second.
A second.
This is the next step in the financing of Nola Oil through the bonds, through the port, and we have Ms. Meredith in the audience today to answer some questions, and we have Mr. Christian Amity here as well to make some comments if he chooses.
Thank you again, Meredith Hathorn with Fellow Udell. So I was here a few months ago, and we did the preliminary approval resolution. And what that did was it authorized us to go to the State Bond Commission. So we're coming back here with a little bit more detail, and Christian can talk a little bit more about where the project is as far as its financing. But I want to go over just some of the highlights of this financing for you. If you'll recall, as we discussed before, you are acting as a conduit issuer, which means that you are lending your name to these bonds. You have done this before for some other projects, but this project is payable solely from the funds of the company. They do not have any pledge of your credit or the parish credit, the state of Louisiana's credit, or any other political subdivisions. These investors are buying the credit of Nola Oil Terminal, and it will be secured by a leasehold mortgage on the facility that is being built, which again is a blending and storage facility in dock and wharfs and berths for barges. The amount is $300 million. We have increased in this resolution the cap on the interest rate to 10%. I know that sounds like a large amount, but that rate is just for some flexibility. We will actually not be selling these bonds until sometime, hopefully in the first quarter of 2022. And so just because there's been a little bit of volatility in the market, we want to have a little bit more flexibility in case they do have like a senior debt and a subordinate debt piece. So that subordinate debt piece may have a little bit higher interest rate. So again, it's a flexibility. We have the maturity is still the not to exceed the 30 years. And again, the first phase is for not to exceed $300 million. There's no money that is being provided by the port to do this financing. And the structure has developed a little bit since I was last here, because the land has been purchased by Nola Oil, so it'll be leased to the port. The port will lease the land in the building that is built with the bond proceeds back to the company. That is really required by IRS rules in order for these to be tax exempt. And if you'll recall, being tax exempt is really what is why the company's coming to y'all, because it will lower their overall cost of doing business. We also award these bonds to Citigroup, which is the underwriter that was chosen by the company. And we provide that the bonds will only be purchased by accredited investors, and those are really sophisticated institutional investors. They're not mom and pop. So these are people who are very sophisticated and are willing to take the risk of having a transaction like a Nola Oil, which is a startup company, because again, they're coming to y'all and starting this up. And again, just another level of protection for the port and the parish, so that someone is not just buying something that they don't really understand what they're buying. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, we will not be signing these documents until 2022, so there are some changes that have to be made to them. And in the resolution, we've said that we won't make any changes unless they're approved by bond council. There will be a public hearing that will need to be held, and we'll have that where the public can come and object. And so in a few weeks, we'll publish that notice, and you'll see that in the newspaper. And then we'll have y'all hold that hearing. And I think that's really it on the resolution. One thing is that we filed, as we had authority to with the preliminary resolution, we filed with the State Bond Commission, and we are expecting their approval on November the 18th. Obviously, we have to go to them and get their approval, but we have not heard of any questions that we weren't able to answer from the Bond Commission staff. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mrs. Newberry?
Yeah, so can you give us the definition of a conduit issuance?
Sure. It's a conduit issuer is really someone who lends its name to the bond issue. So it is really just a pass-through, like if you think about conduits or electricity or whatever. It's the money is the bonds are issued by the issuer, you. You lend the money to the company pays you back. It just flows through the trustee. It's very similar to your IMT deal. And every time I do a 501c3 transaction for like a hospital, like an Ochsner or Children's or what have you, and we go through the LPFA, that's also a conduit issue, or whether it's Tulane or Loyola. That is how the IRS has made us do these bond issues, because they want the public involved whenever you have a tax-exempt bond issue. So Nola Oil cannot go and just do a tax-exempt issue on its own. It has to find an entity that has the requirements of the IRS, and obviously your port has those requirements.
And it has to be the governing authority, the board. We are the executive of this.
Yes, the name is the port that's on there, but you as the board are taking the action to authorize those bonds, absolutely.
Okay, so just to clarify with the public, so we have the port is not responsible for any of this project.
correct.
And if the company would belly up, is the public on the hook for that money?
No.
That needs to be clear, and
Yes.
that's what they need to understand. So, I mean, I support the project, I think it's a great project, but I want the public to understand that we are not on the hook for this project. So if they would belly up, it would be the bond.
Holders, yes,
The
absolutely.
holders'
Those institutional
responsibility.
investors who said, yeah, we know what we're buying and we're willing.
So, and if that's the case also, would the port be, who would have the control over the land and the improvements of
So
the property?
again, that would be the bondholders. There would be a credit committee that would be figuring out what to do, and they would foreclose or they would do something else, just what would they do? And so maybe they could get another operator to come in. If you have a really good facility, right? And, presumably if you have a good facility, you're not going to default. But if there's a problem and it's really just an operator or it's people, they could just change the operator. So the bondholders will have some control over those proceedings, but it would all be worked out in a type of a bankruptcy.
Now, last time you spoke, you mentioned something about a pilot payment. I didn't see that in this contract. And can you reiterate that?
Yes. So the company has been very clear that they are willing to pay pay an amount that is equal to the taxes that would be levied on this facility. So there's no discount, there's nothing. The payment is usually put into the bond documents. And so that it would be in the loan agreement or the lease agreement where we would have that obligation to pay those
So it's not
taxes.
in this agreement, it'll go into.
It's not in this resolution, it's in the bond documents. Because that's really a contract, right? So we want it in the contract itself.
Okay, so is that based on, what is that, the pilot based on, the pilot payments?
So it's based on the ad valorem value of
Just the value of what they've built. Would that be the first year, the second year, or the completion of the project? Just to clear that up. When they start paying the pilot payments, would that be the first year of their?
If there were ad valorem taxes that were due the first year, they would start paying right then. So we are expecting if they would have owed a tax, but for this financing, taking it off the property rolls because of the owner being the port, they are going to make those payments, and they can come and tell you that. That's what they've represented, and I promise you that if there is a change, I will be right back here to you. But that is what's been
I
represented.
understand. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Russo.
Yes, thank you, Meredith, for clearing that up, and I wanted to make sure that they understood the pilot. When you said tax exempt, I didn't want people thinking something differently, but there is a tremendous difference between this project financing mechanism and what we've done with other projects like the railroad. We are not on the hook, as we are in the railroad project with sustainability partners for up to $8 million, possibly $50 million. We are on the hook for paying that back. Here, we are not on the hook for paying anything back, and I want to ask Mr. Christian Amity if he'd like to make a few comments at this time to move forward.
Ms. Hawthorne, I do have a couple questions before you go ahead and put the dias here. The rate of interest, it's capped at 10%. When investors are determining whether they're going to invest in a project like this, in a risky place, the area just got about 8 feet of water during Hurricane Ida. They're going to be storing crude oil. I mean, does some of that go into that higher interest rate?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Got
I mean, if it was the parish borrowing, there'd be a much different rate. But yes, it's a rate that's based on the credit profile of your borrower, and then also the market, obviously.
Got it. So, I mean, does that translate another way that these investors are making decisions based off of the low-lying location, climate change, lack of levees currently, those types of things?
Yes, absolutely. Climate change is a very big, or as we call it, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, are very big issues. And so those will all be addressed in the offering document. So it will all be about location, resiliency, sustainability, everything will be in that decision. in that offering document for investors to make their decision. We also give the investors the opportunity to actually talk to the company. And occasionally the investors will actually come down and look at the property. So there's definitely opportunity for the investors to really look under the hood, shall we say.
Got it. Thank you very much. Yield. Mr. Amadi? Yeah, please. Mr. Russo had some questions.
I just want to make some comments.
I have questions.
It's a little sticky. It's not working.
Christian Amity, 120 Myrtle Grove Lane, Nola Oil Terminal. Just wanted to come here and thank everybody. This project, we have been funded now. We have purchased steel. We are building, fabricating the structure that goes in the river. The first dock, the construction dock that we would be using for Vulcan and for all of that, we were able to find some steel local. And those pieces of the dock are already being fabricated at this point. We will have structure going into the river first quarter of next year, possibly even be operational by the end of the first quarter. It's a lot in advance of where we thought, probably 4 to 5 months ahead of schedule. It's going to be a good revenue center for Plaquemines. This project, for example, I answer my phone. If anybody has anything, any questions, any concerns, I've always prided myself on, if you call me, I'm either going to text you back or I'm going to call you within 5 minutes. So there is no breakdown of communication. Any member of the port, any member of the audience, any member of the council can call me at any time. We're not trying to hide anything. We're working with Full Udell. This firm is, the best bond attorneys that I've ever seen. So we're all fortunate to have them on board. A lot of work has been done thus far, but the bulk of it is about to happen. So if there's any, unclear anything, I think the communication is about to really increase here across the board. And we're just here to help. I think this is a win-win for NOLA, for the parish, for the port, and hope to see some other projects break ground and be successful here, because I really feel like we're at the tip of the iceberg in the good times and all of the economic development that we've always dreamed about. It's coming.
Thank you, Mr. Amity. I'm in queue, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you some questions. I appreciate you coming here today. And so we still have a process that we have to go through. We're waiting on bond commission, and then you have to come back to us for approval. Are you planning on presenting your project to the board and the public at a meeting, or, because I'd like to see that, and I know the port administration would love to see your project. So we can maybe sit down in the next month or so before the first of the year to see that idea, how y'all moving forward and what's your vision of your company. So we would love to see that. I know, I would assume other board members would too. So if we can get that set up, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
All right, that's it for me.
Mr. Russo?
Yes, Mr. Amity, I want to thank you for your persistence in pursuing this project. I know it's been long coming. You've had many hurdles, and I think you're at the finish line or getting ready to cross it. But the board is behind you, from what I understand from the vote of the last meeting. And Ms. Meredith, as Christian said, you're an outstanding bond attorney. I've heard nothing but good things from all of the people that I've talked to about this project. And y'all have done an excellent job in moving this project forward without any cost to the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District or the people of Plaquemines. So, and your commitment to pay the pilot is outstanding. So I thank you for that, and I know that was part of the discussion we had from day one. And you were there, and you were encouraging. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Amity, can you tell us a little bit about some of the rail traffic that might be going to your facility when it's built out?
Right now, we're not, anticipating a tremendous amount of rail traffic. We will work with the railroad, we'll work with the parish, work with the port, do our part. It's not a lot of oil is going to come in by rail. It's not going to make it past St. James down to Plaquemines. The only thing that would come in would be Canadian crude oil, and it's not going to make it past the refinery complex in St. James.
All right. Can you explain for folks that are at home that haven't seen the proposal, what's the capacity of the facility going to be like? How many tanks are going to be there? That type of thing?
It's going to be about, really at the end of the day, you somewhat build to spec, but we're permitted for up to 10 million barrels of tanks, two ship docks and 2 barge docks. It would, in my opinion, it's going to be a reduced footprint from that.
All right. Mr. Bartholomew, thank you very much, Mr. Amity.
Amity, would you please give us the telephone number so the people in the audience can hear in case they have questions?
It's 504-813-5968, and it's on our website as well.
504-813-5968.
5968. Yep, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Anybody else?
Again, thank you for all of your efforts in working this project, and if there's no other questions, I'd like to call a question.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, I'll refer item number G.
Item G deferred. Item 7, new business. 7A, introduction, there are none. 7B, PLT discussion and update. Commissioner Rousseau.
Yes, I'll defer that item as well, since it was requested that this presentation be made at the next meeting. And I'll also defer discussion of the calendar items, because the items that I was going to talk about were the publication of the code name projects, and I've been assured by the director that we'll be getting briefed on that in the next week or so. So I'll defer those 2 items.
Item 8, approval of the October 28th, 2021 meeting minutes.
So offered.
Offered by LaFrance, second by Kognovich. Machine's open. Seven oh.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by LaFrance. Second by Arborough. All right, 7-0 as well. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to close at 3:54 p.m.